Hello, I'm William Brougham and welcome to Balmain here in the inner west of Sydney. We're making a very special broadcast today in association with the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We also pay our respects to the elders within our LGBTIQ community. Now, why are we here today? It's a very special occasion. 50 years ago, in September 1970, was the announcement of the formation of the first national homosexual rights organisation here in Australia, the Campaign Against Moral Persecution. Many of you will know it as CAMP or Camping. And it's an absolute privilege and an honour to be here with one of our golden elders, one of the founding members of CAMP here in Balmain, in the very room, in the very home where some of those early meetings took place. Please make him feel very welcome, Mr. Peter de Waal. Make your entrance known. Here he is, very excited.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. It's so lovely to have you here and all the people that are viewing. To celebrate is really a momentous moment in life. So today we meet on Wongal country, which was known as Wanna, meaning west. It originally extended from the suburb of Balmain and Birchgrove in the east to Silverwater and Auburn in the west. The northern boundary was the Parramatta River. I wish to pay my respects to your elders past, present and those emerging. One of your leaders taught me the following powerful words. Only those who have known discrimination truly know its evil. Only those who have never experienced prejudice can discount the importance of laws that provide equality, justice and inclusiveness for all. At the first 1978 Sydney Mardi Gras, the 78ers, and I'm one of those, we suffered police violence. In return, we shouted and screamed, "Stop police attacks on gay, women and blacks." Now your First Nation leads our annual Mardi Gras parade. It's your welcome to country for us. When the 78ers reach Taylor Square, you honour us with a smoking ceremony that cleanses us of bad spirits and sends us on our way, together with you, to a prouder, brighter future. I live here in solidarity at Checkerboard, built on land which always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. Elsewhere on your ancient ancestral land, yes, 60,000 years old, the Campaign Against Moral Persecution was born. Camping, as it was called, became the first national homosexual rights organisation in Australia. And the foundation stone, yes, today, 18,000 days ago, was laid of what we today call our LGBTQI+ community. This is the story of a 1966 gay liberation warrior couple, Peter and John, who became part of something very special, and it lives on. He is a picture of our liberation warriors and their 1960s woeful and beyond lives. Two handsome homosexual men, both 28, became a couple unceremoniously in 1966. For one, it's love at first sight, while the other, he needed more time. You know, a gradual process. Only a little time passed before the air was filled with lust, love, light and passion. There was something in the air that night. They were infatuated with each other, and they became starry-eyed. They're both Caucasian, but from different social strata and backgrounds. One from a war-ravaged Middle European country, with a lower working class, war-disrupted childhood. He's an atheist. The other a middle class and well-educated Australian Anglican. He carries religious battle scars because of his courage. On and off during the late 1960s, our gay liberation warriors, when comforting each other about their distressed and difficult lives, in a gentle embrace, frequently and longingly said, like a lament, if only there was a homosexual rights organization we could join. Both yearned for a better life. No, not materially, nor physically, but living as a recognized homosexual couple. I'm going to look back 50, 60 years and beyond to capture a sense of what lives of homosexuals were like then. New South Wales Police Central Intelligence Branch Service Squad detectives were told that homosexuals were a cancer in the community. This was in 1958. Our warriors indignantly responded, how dare they? What a hurtful, disgusting and put down that is. The 1966 New South Wales illiberal Premier Robert Askin, he shouted disgustingly, run the bastards over, when facing demonstrators in the street. He was seated in his open-top luxury car. Homosexuals, trans and intersex people more so, they were the underdogs. We were kicked from every direction. Some said they're the scum of the earth, omnipresent from time immemorial. Dark religious, communal and political forces attempted to pound us into the ground. Warriors frequently overheard, but it's so hard to believe today that during the 1960s it was frequently said, I've never met a homosexual before. New South Wales Police Commissioner Colin Delaney described homosexuality as Australia's greatest menace. Our warrior couple felt awful, disgusted and distraught, being compared with causing physical destruction, harm, being a threat or a danger. To what? To whom? And where? Fred Niles' Festival of Light stood for, they said, Christian nuclear families and decency values. Decency? Rainbow families? Nor Christianity was in the festival's DNA. Our warriors labelled them the Festival of Darkness. They're the spitting image of today's Australian Christian lobby. the former and latter two-faced darkness crowd, they're best described as follows. Upon leaving their mother's warm, colourful, secure, nurturing wombs, they immediately move into dark, dingy, damp and deep mines, never to re-emerge or to see the light. More terribly, homosexual men were criminals for loving and sharing their bodies willingly with each other. The two lovely warrior men were burdened by archaic British colonial laws. Their same-sex physical love was labelled not to be named among Christians and an unnatural act. It's not surprising that acceptance of one's homosexuality at this time took the bravery of a soldier sprinting towards a hostile enemy. For 7 years, until 1973, our warriors' loving relationship was judged, labelled, demonized as sexual orientation disturbance or mental illness. It took your learned psychiatrist until that year, 1973, to understand that our sexual behavior is normal. Our couple and others responded nonchalantly. That's something us homosexuals have known forever. Yes, we're just halfway in this marathon of 1950s misery and injustice. Here's a reason why gays' darkest hours were inside closed closets. Gays felt they carried a second-class citizen label. We marched, we shouted, we rallied, we yelled, "Keep your laws of our bodies." Sweet success came in 1984. Our lovemaking was no longer a criminal offence. Overnight, snuggled up in bed, our warriors' lovemaking was no longer an abominable offence, only in the eyes of New South Wales statutes. Dogmatic, ultra-conservative Melbourne Archbishop, yes, George Pell, in his fundamentalist Christian crusades played God. No, it was worse. He believed he was God. Much to the horror of our religious warrior, he, George, refused the Rainbow Sash movement, a group of gay Catholics, one of the 7 holy sacraments, yes, communion. Our atheist warrior was outraged and said, "That Bishop George, he's an anathema to human rights and equality." Aversion therapy was rife, pervasively perpetrated by medicos during the early 1970s. Now, gay conversion therapy has emerged via religious groups and cults. This ain't a happy Jan, nor euphoric epoch in our community's lives. Our Anglican warrior believed human beings are created in the image and likeness of God. Not surprising, our atheist warrior held a different and evolutionary view. Yet, despite coming from very different directions, both believed this former medical and now religious quackery does our LGBTQI plus community much more harm than good. So warriors agreed to resculpture a human's perfectly wonderful natural sexuality for the sake of conforming to a fundamentalist dogma. It really is unethical. Warrior reflecting on life and this 50 year of human psyche butchering, its years of horrors, suicides, miseries, destruction. He realized, tensed up with pained emotions, it resembles war years. Human devastation, but without bombs, V2s, gunfire, nor exploding mines. Warrior silently, teary-eyed, he laments, when will they, these pious religious butchers, ever learn? Our loving warrior couple were so tempted, but too anxious to hold hands, have tender male embraces, and kiss in Sydney public place. Yes, Martin Place. They knew it came with great risk and genuine fear of police arrest. Rainbow families, child custody, adoption and child fostering were our warriors' pipe dreams. Oh, it was a dream of sheer delight. Bringing about change was so tough and so difficult to do. Our warriors and others bodily beavered bravely 24/7, with little or no positive results. However, eventually these likeable warrior men put their lives on the line to educate and change the nation. This was the 1960s, 70s Australia, where homosexuals lived, loved, longed to be equal, bravely beavered, struggled, feared, worked for better times. Yes, belonging was their love, desire, need, wish and aim. On 10 September 1970, our warriors, as per usual, opened their Australian newspaper. Laughter, joy, with tears erupted. Here is our manna from heaven. Our wish has been granted. The campaign against moral persecution was born. Our warrior couple made raucous, clucking cry like chooks upon reading that John Ware and Christabel Poll were camping's parents, so to speak. Putting pen to paper, our liberation warriors, so courageously joined to become foundation members of the first Australian national homosexual rights movement. Within no time, 19th of September 1970 to be precise, a follow-up Australian newspaper article appeared. Barely 10 days after penning their letter, a John Ware, 19 September, response arrived, partly saying, "Judging from your letter, you and Peter seem to be the type of stable people we are trying to attract as active members." Yippee! Our warrior said, "We're in the starting blocks of our 50-year liberation journey. Yeah, we're on our way."
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter de Waal, one of the foundation members from the campaign against moral persecution. And Peter has very kindly agreed to talk a bit about some of the milestones, and he sent me some pointers, and we'll be discussing them right now. Thank you very much, Peter, for telling us a little bit about the introduction to camp and how it came about and your involvement. Now, one of the biggest milestones in the early days was Camp Inc., the publication. Could you tell us a bit about that, please?
Yes, it was the only form of communication many members of our community had, to be in contact with an organization which was trying to work towards change. It was posted out in brown wrappers because we couldn't reveal to the general public or the post office that they were gay.
Now, Peter de Waal, in those early days of those camp meetings, what kind of people would come to the meetings?
Quite a variety of different people would come to the meetings, and talk about perhaps what their lives was like a support group, or they might plan actions to take.
Now, one of the huge milestones, 1972, the ABC documentary series Checkerboard. You and Bon, Peter Boonsall-Boone, were on it, and it resulted in Bon's sacking from his job. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Well, first of all, it was mainly filmed in this house where we are today. Mainly in the kitchen, although in the room where we're in now, the ABC actually gave us, or the people we invited, they shouted us a wonderful dinner, but unfortunately it never appeared in the final product. So it was a difficult program to go through. The questions were very confronting, but the interviewers, he was asking the questions the general community were asking. How do two men or two women, in program's case, being gay or homosexual, how do they actually live? How do they manage a relationship?
What was the general response and reaction from viewers to the programme?
The material I've seen, and from the producer himself, Neil Munro, most of the feedback was positive. It was just the organised institutions like religion,
Now, in 1973, in this very home, you and Bon and others established the first gay and lesbian telephone counselling service, Phone a Friend. Tell us more. How did that come about?
It was an outcome basically of being on the Checkerboard program. Our phone number, and here's the phone.
We've got the telephone right here.
Right here. Our telephone number became Camp Inc.'s phone number. So we used to get lots of calls. Bon, of course, got the sack. He had to look for work. Calls that are, people who need a friendly ear at the other end, usually living at night, lonely people. Anyway, so a dear person who was involved in camp, Christabel, he had established a Phone a Friend service in Stockholm. He said that's what we should do here. Next question was, well, where will it be housed? Well, Christa basically said, you've got a spare front room, let's hold it there. And I'll organise a roster.
And this is the very telephone that was used.
Telephone, the first one.
Back in 1973,
Yeah.
here in your home in Balmain.
Yes.
Well, before that, in 1972, Camp was very much involved in the election campaign for David Widder. Tell us a bit more about that.
David Widder stood he was the very first openly gay candidate. He stood for the federal seat of Low, which at the time was held by Billy McMahon. Now, Billy McMahon was supposed to be gay. So David's wonderful slogan was, I've got my eyes on Billy's seat.
I love it, and they certainly did. Going forward to 1975, Camp's involvement in International Women's Year. Tell us a bit more about that.
So, International Women's Year was sponsored by the federal government in Australia. There was funding available. The women within camp wanted to organize seminars, all sorts of things, to highlight the position of lesbians in the community, which is somewhat different to male homosexuals. So they applied for $30,000 to do lots and lots of things. They eventually got $4,000, which is just extraordinary. This was the first gay lesbian organization who got some funding.
So
some government funding.
So the first LGBTIQ
Yeah.
community organisation to get government funding.
Yeah.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
And then going forward to 1975 and 1976, we had the Royal Commission on Human Relationships, and that resulted in Michael Clossey's sacking. What was that about?
Michael Clossey, he was a teacher at the time at Eastwood Maris Brothers School. He was a teacher in French. He in fact was part of our relationship at the time. And because he was secretary of camp, he promoted the submission, an extraordinary submission, via the media. The school, the church found out, they sacked him. Then of course the next thing, they didn't want him or any homosexuals, the Catholic hierarchy, to give evidence at the Royal Commission. It was a big challenge by the churches in general to stop us. We won in the end.
Now, a little bit more fun. I'm intrigued by the idea of the camp not-for-profit coffee shop. Well, tell us a bit about how that came about.
Well, there was a need for a non-profit organisation. There were quite a few bars where men could go, or women, in general, or for some people it's alienating to go to a bar. You know, it can be a lonely experience to go in there. So the coffee shop was to just have it open for people to come. There was always a friendly person, a volunteer at the door, welcoming people, chatting to them, things like that. So this might, for some people, might have been the very first time that they made contact with other gays or lesbians in their community.
Now, we are, of course, making this broadcast with Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, 1978, what we call now the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. What was camp's role in the naming?
At one executive meeting, of which I was a member at the time, Ron Austin, he came up with the idea to have a night street party. It had to be at night because we had to hide ourselves. We couldn't, you know, this was times when it was still, we were still criminals. So he suggested that to the executive meeting. Margaret McMahon said, why don't we call it the Mardi Gras, Ron? That's how the naming came about.
Now, the greatest legacy of camp, what do you think it is?
Oh, that's really hard to say. Look, perhaps at a personal level, you know, to be involved for me, I learned a lot. I became very open about my sexuality. It liberated me in many ways.
And what do you think our community, the LGBTI community, can learn from the lessons of camp?
I think the underlying strategies of camp was to work with individuals. Yes, it was important to do global things, or, you know, like homosexual law reform, but to, you know, like the coffee shop, to work with individuals and build up individuals.
Peter de Waal, it's been an absolute honour. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
I just hope that our community will grow from strength to strength. The other thing I'm concerned about is that there is a right-wing push in the world, and I think we need to be very, very on our guard that none of those wonderful things that we have achieved in 50 years will be rolled back.
Because of course they didn't come to us on a plate, they were campaigned for, and any of them could be rolled back with the wrong kind of government. We've got, of course, the Religious Freedom Bill that's up and coming. But Peter de Waal, I want to thank you and all your fellow foundation members of camp and all the members through the years, all those of your generation who've campaigned for the rights that we enjoy today. I hope none of us will take them for granted. And I think the last thing we've got to do is to raise a toast to you, Peter, and to all your members of camp and all the pioneers who fought and campaigned for our rights today.
And to our community. Yeah.
From me, William Brougham, and on behalf of Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, thank you so much for joining us. Happy Camp 50th.
Thank you.
Thank you.